Yeah. I'm going to do some of them. Larry will jump in at the right moments. This is sideways, but it's a map that gives you a general location of the area in question. Everybody turn your head to the left. Capel Green, which is the field that you saw on the video, is at top. Okay. Next, please. Right, this is actually from Sky Crash, this map, and gives you a lay of the land. The top lateral slice is the main land. I'm sorry.
This is where it landed. That's it. We can go to the next one. That's just a drawing, really. Just an indicator for you. That's an aerial view. Oh. Let's see. That's the field with a dot showing where the event took place. Next one, please. That is me. I mean, at one time there were people saying I was never even in the Air Force. I mean, you hear it all.
He rented that costume.
I did. Peter's backyard tag sale. Tents and you sell all yours. But that was me in Texas, hating the fact I had my hair all cut off. Next one. This is the sign that used to be on the flight line at RAF Bentwaters. That was taken around the time of the events. Just to give you an idea, welcome to the Twilight Zone. Next, please. Well, this is an interesting one. This is, I'll read it for you. It says 81st Security Police Squadron in processing instruction sheet. The events happened to people on D flight. We worked in shifts from A, B, C, and D. D flight worked swings and mids. That was meaning we worked night shift. This is saying that the bus, when it leaves, this is the first thing I got for shift flight assignment. You were assigned to D flight. Your shift commander is Major Ziegler and some other guy. And it just talks about in processing information. So that, you know, that's a record I stole too. Next, please. I'm a thief. That's the badge that we wear, and security police. That's the one I actually, that was mine, and I gave it to Peter, and we'll sell it at Sotheby's someday. And this is RAF Bentwaters circa 1981 in the spring, and what you see here are those structures that are rust-colored are actually nuclear. They're said to be, on an engineering standpoint, nuclear-proof structures. So if F-16s that were carrying tactical weapons in the event of nuclear war, the base would have been hit. East Anglia was a first strike capacity. You guys all knew that. I mean, probably Britain would have been annihilated. So we kept planes in there, but that's just irrelevant, but that's what it looked like there. That's
defying gravity.
That is. But these are pictures, funny enough, from that era, from that time. I took this picture again in '81, and these are A-10 tank busters, and you remember them from the Gulf War and all that nonsense that we did. And I came up to this fence, and I was a cop too, and the guy came out of there and yelled at me. This would have been a restricted picture, but I ran away with the camera, so you can see it years later. Next, please. This is the picture Peter took in 1988. We called this up here, this corner, this is at the far end of the Bentwaters runway, Commie Corner. And why that was is that the London Communist Party would send people up there in little trucks and they'd take tail numbers off our planes. We couldn't touch them. We'd go by them and they'd do this and we'd do that. Sorry, kids. And it was all in fun, really. You know, we like communists, really. But we kind of the thing. And this church was, to make things worse, was they, as soon as we get to the base, they say, see that church? No one's there anymore. In 1968, there was a sacrifice there. And then, that was such a kind of welcoming. This is the post. This looks like a pile of horse manure, but actually I was in that the night of the events and called out. It's perimeter post 18, which, well, it's perimeter post 18.
Actually an old pillbox modified.
Just a bunch of dirt with a tarp. This picture was taken the day of the incidents because I went to Ipswich to hang out with some friends. I was pricing Marshall amplifiers. And I couldn't beat these Arab guys down there. Their prices were ridiculous. But this is the main gate. We're in alert condition. I had a camera simply, I wish I had it at the incident. I had it simply for the reason of taking pictures to send them home to my family. But this is the condition we were in that day. It says alert. That's the main gate at Bentwaters. Now it's a ghost town. That's just a close-up of it. Now, a lot of times this is irrelevant, but a lot of people said we went out to the site in Jeeps. Well, everyone thinks of the military in Jeeps. But actually we had pickup trucks. And this is very much like, this is actually probably the pickup truck itself that we went out to the Forest Inn, riding in the back. And it says security police up here. And this is also the type of vehicle that thing went through the window and the guy kicked the windscreen out, if you remember me telling you that. Just something so you have a perspective on it wasn't Jeeps we used there. Next, please.
The warm, welcoming sign of the MOD. This is a prohibited place within the meaning of the Official Secrets Acts, unauthorized persons, etc., and so forth.
There's a man in this room right now, who I will not name, who literally almost got over that fence and got me that sign to take home a few weeks ago.
Bless
We
his
won't
heart.
name him, yeah. And he almost did it, I'll tell you. Anyway, next please. It's falling off, you devil.
But thanks, Tom.
Oh. No one's surprised. This is the road pointing down to East Gate. And East Gate is where the first lights were seen on that night. We saw it on the documentary. And Peter took that in 1990, I believe, if it's in color. That's right. Next, please.
Right, February probably 21st, 1988, we come up to this little rise, and Larry points out there. This is the photograph that I took while we were recording it. Now, you've seen this on video.
This is not a play of light. This is not a discoloration in the film. This is not an emulsion crack. This is an actual reflection of the discoloration in the field at that time.
And that is the site where the thing sat.
We like to call it ground zero. Next, please. Now, this is an interesting thing, and Jenny Randles is someone to follow. I wish she had been here, because I would have asked her about this specifically. One of the witnesses to the events, you heard me describe the flash of light and then a triangular object. This was drawn by an actual witness to that event, but not me. And this was leaked out through a source we don't know. Jenny knows about it more than I do. But this witness drew this, and it's obviously been copied many times, but what he's trying to capture is the event I described, but all at one time.
Yeah. This is from Sky Crash.
Is it from Sky? Okay,
Yeah.
It's from Sky Crash.
Oh, hold it.
This happens at every... Oh, it's in there. Oh. Now, I'm a lousy artist, but in Betty Andreasen's living room, I was asked to draw this thing in 1982, and I just drew this rough thing. I never realized that this picture would shoot all over the world in publications from the News of the World, which supposedly interviewed me, but really didn't, but that's okay. And also, and this picture was on Ralph Noyes, the back of a fictional book he did called A Secret Property, which is really kind of a hoot, because there's a crazy Colonel Hoyt on the base.
Out of print, but a wonderful book if you can get hold of it.
Terrific. And it's also, and this is in Japan, where they just went crazy on this. You could tell them you were Jesus, and they'd have you on TV there. But that's on we go. Oh, this is a thing. This was a kid, I believe, a friend of ours, Antonio Huneas, who's a journalist, snapped in Japan. It was sold over in model shops and stuff. It's kind of chintzy. I hope they didn't charge much, but it's kind of representing the incident. And the aliens, of course, are like 9 feet tall or something, but it's interesting. I don't know. It's just, in Japan, they love this stuff.
Right. This is the Times of London, December 27th, 1980, documenting the fact that a meteor did shoot over this part of England, and it's probably what was misinterpreted as was later given as an excuse. Now, it is true that a meteor did shoot over, I believe, on the night of the 27th. It's been confirmed by the Royal Astronomy Society or whatever, and the fact is, had you been standing in Capel Green and looking at exactly the right place at the right moment, you would have seen this thing flash over for a maximum of about 5.5 seconds. But this is what these men misinterpreted as that thing.
The end of it actually reads,
Oh, yeah.
after going through everything, the press, of course, and I do say again, they are the enemy, and it's sad because I'm sure there's decent reporters, but they're not allowed to be on these issues. The film Airport 1975 was shown on television on Thursday night, raising public awareness to the possibility of aircraft in trouble. That phrase has nothing to do with the entire article before it. Nothing. They think you're idiots.
Methinks the lady doth protest too much.
The lousy movie also. This is the infamous HALT document that through me and the Citizens Against UFO Secrecy and Robert Todd got released in the early 80s. And as it's been said, it does read like science fiction. Who's familiar with this? Give me a hand.
Is anybody familiar with this? Okay, what we are going to do is ask, well, it is actually available in a reprint form in one of the booklets that Tony is selling back there. We're not going to take the time to read it now and to generate more money for Amphora, in fact. But it is freely available in a great deal of UFO literature and lays out a number of the specifics that were reported that night with HALT and the men involved.
But it's a combination of events,
yeah,
and compressed and not accurate, but it's important. This is important. This is a medical dental appointment, and this is one of the pieces I stole. What you see obliterated up here in white is my Social Security number, and why we do that in this day and age of fraud. If someone in the audience in America or anywhere saw that and was inclined, they could go ring up charge accounts and everything. And, you know, we're trapped with our social... I don't know what it's like in England, but we have numbers on our heads. This is made out to me, 81st Security Police up here. The date is 2nd of February, 1981. At the it was on a typing kind of paper, so it was on through that. Optical Retina Clinic, that stands for. Under it, it says burn exposure. The doctor is Eccles, the number is whatever, and the date for it was issued was on 10 January. This is just a few weeks, a week after the event. And this is bring all records and x-rays, full exam, Lake and Heath Eye Ear Clinic, Lake and Heath. But it's an important piece because it showed the beginning. I don't know where the follow-up information is. It's in my files in Maryland somewhere. But just so you might want to see it. That is an interesting picture because the gentleman who, that's me actually, at a change of command ceremony for our wing commander Gordon Williams, who it has been said didn't have involvement in these events, and yet he really did. And he was on the base for about 1.5 years. The average rotation for a senior officer is 2.5 years. They got him out of there real quick. That was the day he made general. I was his bodyguard for that day. So when Colonel Holt has tried to suggest that we mistook Gordon Williams for somebody else, he doesn't realize that we even have the documentation where it lists me as being his bodyguard for that day. I was very familiar with the man, and that's just from that day. That Sergeant Adrian Bustinza you hear about if you read the story or hear about it a lot. We have a statement from him that will be included in Left at East Gate. That picture was taken by me in the Valley of the Kings in Egypt in 1981, where we were sent for a month to get us away from the base. And we did nothing but sit around and play cards with these people with towels on their heads and things. No offense, I mean, they play cards.
Adrian stood right next to Larry that night in the field.
He did, even in Egypt. This is Gordon Williams back here, who happened to be caught in this particular picture. There's a big shindig for him leaving. The Air Force guys love to party, I'll tell you. This is Greg Battram, who is involved in this event. He was with me at the phone. He also, you'll see this stands for Vietnam Service. He was a Marine in Vietnam, a weapons systems officer on F-4 Phantoms. His life went kind of screwy with his marriage. He went in the Air Force as an enlisted man, just to do it.
Also kind enough to give us a statement for the book.
He owns one of the largest travel agencies in the western United States now, which is kind of interesting. But that's him and I, just after the events, kind of doing what we like to do. Hated the bow ties, though. This is an important piece now. This is where things get kind of funky. This is request for separation, Airman First Class Lawrence Warren. I was no longer working as a security police officer. I was a cop still, but I was in the back offices, so they could really keep an eye on me. I went to a lawyer to make a long story short, because I'd made waves, they were making life tough for me, and got this thing ball moving that due to breach of contract on the Air Force's part, I was eligible for a discharge. My plan was to get out, go back in, and get stationed at another base in a different job. Well, they got me. Well, this is signed by Gordon Williams, his staff, the commander, who, as a wing commander, would not handle these responsibilities. Not at all. Colonel Holt and people under like that would do that. Anyway, the full colonel and commander of the bases took care of my discharge, personally. And he writes, I approve the honorable discharge of Lawrence B. Warren from the U.S. Air Force to be effective on or about 15 May 1981. I carefully reviewed his application and conclude that the intent of AFR, blah, 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 non-fulfillment of guaranteed enlistment trainee program has been met. Now, I've had a person that knows the codes and all and says, none of this is all chicken feed. None of it makes sense or applies to real codes. Approval of Warren's request to separate from the service is in the best interests of himself and the U.S. Air Force. And I've been flapping my mouth, so if you can read into that, it's interesting. And that's just showing his signed stamp or whatever. Well, there's been a lot of people that, again, said, the most hilarious thing I ever read about my military life was that Warren got a honorable discharge he didn't want. Well, I didn't want one of the other ones, this honorable one. So this is the one I did not want, but got. So a lot of people have said I was never in the Air Force. It's a shame you have to go to these lengths to kind of demonstrate things. I had been rebuffed by the, by the Air Force on my attempts to re-enlist. I had a false code, as I've told you earlier, and was finding things very strange that I couldn't get back in. They didn't, for a while, they denied I even served in the Air Force. Very strange. My congressman, the Honorable Gerald B. Solomon, United States Representative in Saratoga Springs, New York, gets this reply from the Department of the Air Force Chief Surgeon General. It says, Dear Mr. Solomon, this is in reply to your letter on behalf of Mr. Lawrence Warren concerning his interest in enlisting in the Air Force. That should say re-enlisting. It's as if I'd never been there before. Authorities in the Office of the Surgeon General USAF advised that Mr. Warren was permanently disqualified by the Air Force Air Training Command Squadron on September 17, 1981. That is 5 months after I left the Air Force because of breach of contract on their part. Suddenly, 5 months later, I'm an issue, and they've determined ineligibility. It makes no sense. By reason of congenital partial acquiosis of the blah, 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 blah.
No, let's read this because this is marvelous. Of the radial joint, I can't see it from here. Peripheral, bilateral. Now, cannot fully extend arm. What this letter is saying is that congenital, bilateral, and involving one arm. Congenital, from birth. But yet, he was allowed into the service.
Never around firearms would you have been allowed in with this condition. And when I read this letter, I was so frustrated. At the bottom it says, thank you for your interest in Mr. Warren. Be assured his disqualification is for medical reasons, and there's no reflection on his character or private service record, sure. So I took this letter, as you're seeing it here, and I fully extended my right arm and dropped it in the garbage. The next day I retrieved it, and that's why we still have it.
My favorite part of this, though, is that if they're saying it is bilateral, it refers to one arm. I mean, bilateral refers to two arms, yet they discuss it in one arm. It's nonsense.
Doctors would tell you this is completely nonsense. And then the funny thing is now you're seeing a little hint of how they try to wear you down. And they try to, someone said, well, you'd be better off in the Air Force. They can keep more tabs on you. In reality, to them, the way they look at it, I'd be more of a threat within that system because I knew where to look for things. I knew who to talk to. So that's a complete lie, and this is what they do to people like myself. They make life very, and they'll do it just blatantly. Next one. Oh, this is UFO lands in Suffolk in the news of the world, and this was an issue of contention I had with some folks over in these parts because in the States we sent them all the information we could on the events. The gentleman did call me from the news of the world. I was very brief with him, yet he has a very lengthy interview with this Art Wallace, though he knew very well my name was, and it is not accurate at all. We did not know the News of the World was a tabloid paper. And sadly, certain people were paid a couple £1,000 for the Halt document and thus them using it. And yet we sent it as a courtesy. That was a point, an issue that angered us over there. This is another issue. There was so much press coverage in '83 on this. Forest exploded with blinding light, and it goes on with this, whatever they want to add to the truth, they do.
This is specifically about Larry, though. You can see the top says UFO lands in Suffolk, the airman story. This is the airman in question for this article.
But again, it isn't accurate, so it's not, but it's an interesting thing to see. Thanks, Mitch. That's, This is coverage in Japan, and it looks like I'm trying to sell a TV to somebody, but there was a massive press conference in 1984, and again, the Japanese have almost a circus-like attraction to this phenomena. You can virtually get away with anything over there. I went sincerely to just tell what I knew, and they made me wear dark glasses. They made me, I shaved my mustache off one day and it was in the newspapers, and they like, why did he do it? And I was on these embarrassing TV shows, and yet I was on some good ones, but it was awful. But anyway, that was just a thing to say. In Japan, this case, by the way, is considered one of the foremost important events in UFO studies, and it should be. I think people rely too much on Roswell these days. I'm a little partial, but we're all still alive for the most part. These Roswell guys are getting long in the tooth. That's the main gate in 90 at Bentwaters, and this is a picture Peter took in 1988 when I just got back to the site, and in 85 I came, and it was too muddy. I couldn't get out there. But kind of like Elvis with the microphone, but I was actually kind of reliving the event. This is a picture I took through the windshield of a car in Rendlesham Forest in May of 1985. I was with my wife, and we're driving. Now, to give you an idea, you're familiar with how large this forest, beautiful forest. Well, it's vastly superior to most forests I've seen in the States. This is a bus, one of your tour coaches here, just to give an idea of the massive sweep. It's a beautiful place. We're going down the road. Now, in 1988, Peter and I are walking down this road in the midst of the destruction. And we're going to go back and forth, if you will, but the next picture is taken virtually from this same spot, and look at the difference after what happened. That is potentially the result of weather weapons gone wrong. It's going to be a while to prove, but meteorologists and people who have looked at this stuff say 800-mile-an-hour winds would have to do this, if not more. These are not small trees.
One of the saddest things I've ever seen in my life. Without really taking the time to go into why we feel this is a machine gone horribly wrong or an intentional destruction of a forest by high technology, I'm going to ask Tony, who taped a fairly extensive interview with me today specifically on this, the discovery of Wilhelm Reich of a device that could modify weather for the best, and is still used in an isolated way, although isolated from acknowledgement, as most of this great genius's work are, because most people that hear of Reich, they hear of him or they read stuff about him. They have not read his work. Anyway, Tony, do you think it might be possible at your next meeting to screen that interview that we did today?
Yeah, sure.
Because if it is, folks should be aware and come to the next meeting, and it's just too much to go into right now. But if you go back and forward again, Omar, just for the impact, it's just the way it is. And you can still go out to Suffolk and see this destruction. I mean, there are new seedlings coming in. The British Forestry Service has done a magnificent job in reseeding, but the destruction is unbelievable, and it's heartbreaking. And it happened in 3 hours.
If it is weather weapons, then you guys have, I mean, look at this. This will all be gone by the time this comes back to what it was. And
It happened in 3 hours, there was no prediction, and there was not a drop of rain.
this This is selective destruction right here. You did not have a tornado because the destruction didn't disperse trees for miles and miles. We have tornadoes in the States that are devastating. They'll take a house 50 miles and drop it. This is different. Something has come down, done its thing, gone up like a cookie cutter.
Yeah, it looked like a pie slice to me.
Okay.
It happens.
What was that?
Okay.
Well, we can hit the lights.
Yeah, actually, that really is fine, Oman. Thank you very much.
A lot of these pictures will be recreated in the book, and plus many, many more. We're in Great Britain right now working on a couple things. We've been coming back in October. We did to do final research on our book, which we're ready to rock and roll with. And on the other hand, we've also been doing a self-produced documentary. Hopefully, it'll be of some high caliber quality. I do have a background in production, and we're going to get this thing out, basically a compilation or a companion to our book, where people in the States who, the problem we have in America is that this event has been minimalized on tabloid programs like Unsolved Mysteries. A lot of people, researchers there, feel like, oh, that's an English event. And yet we were all a majority of Americans that went through it. Over here, it was a lighthouse, or it was whatever the press will want you to believe. But quite frankly, we've met so many people that said, I always thought there was more to that than just some lights or a misidentification. So we're pressing on. We're going to get this book out to you as soon as we can. And I imagine you hopefully have some questions.
Let me add one other thing before we go into questions. It is true that we genuinely feel that the enemy here is official government policies in the UK and the US, and overwhelmingly the media. However, thank goodness, there are always exceptions to the rule. One of the exceptions we feel that is in process right now is what in every way seems to us at this point a very serious documentary project in the works by Central Television and ITV that we participated in. In fact, I think Jenny Randalls is working with them today. It will be aired on ITV the first week of August later this year, and we hope you'll tune it in. Now, before we take some questions, let me just spend a few short minutes. My part-time, full-time job is I work as Bud Hopkins' assistant. Bud Hopkins is the preeminent researcher on the abduction phenomena. This is something that in the States, a number of books are already out on. Here, there are one or two. I know Jenny's written a book called Abduction. Philip Mantell and his partner have a book coming out very soon, which I think will be one of the really breakthrough books in this country on the phenomena. It is as disturbing as anything we've discussed today, and it involves histories of people, more than we would imagine. Some people who are in this room, I can say that for a fact. My sister, one of my sisters, it happened to her in this incident that I was knocked out on after I was down. Our best statistics, and I say this from the fact that one of the major pollster organizations in the United States was commissioned to the tune of about $80,000 from private sources 2.5 years ago to conduct a very serious poll on a random sampling of American citizens. And the specific results that we have received lead us to believe that possibly 1 person in 50 in the United States has been, against their will, taken, examined, and returned, sometimes as a part of a reoccurring history, by non-human beings. It is a shattering statistic, and it sounds, and I can see a few faces registering an appropriate disdain, like the worst kind of science fiction tripe. It is not. I wish anyone in here could sit in my place for one day and field these calls and see the photographs of the scars and go through the medical records and read the letters that these folks send us. It is happening. It's quite real. It is actually right now, we are getting more and more letters from folks in the UK who are either researching it seriously or feel that it has happened. And I open it up just in the thought that it is something that if anybody has some questions, we'll try our best to field them, because Larry has a great awareness of it and is an old friend of Bud's and certainly is up on the research and has spent time with me at work. We're open, the field is open right now, and we are, so let's take some questions.
There was one thing I'd like to say, because, you know, that wasn't the way it is, actually. When I have been through things since I was a kid with my mother and other members, well, my mother predominantly, but, and I know in England this abduction thing seems to be a problem for some researchers, and maybe in the States less so now. But I was always told that you can't have more than one experience, else you won't be taken serious. Well, quite honestly, even having one, you're not taken serious. And I have been through these events in my life more clearly the older I get. I've had people totally lucid that knew nothing about my involvement in UFOs see some very amazing things in my presence, and has caused a few relationships. So I have more than just observed the abduction phenomena from afar, more intimate than I care to admit, which is a whole other area, but we delve in that in the book. One thing I just want to say before we do the questions is that in this phenomenon for you researchers, and I've come to this conclusion, that's why I say the press and government are the enemy on this. All too often you guys are too anxious to take one of your cases to the press because thank God, oh, you know, if I'm nice to them, if I put my suit on, if I act like, you know, an upstanding guy, they're going to give me a fair shake and we're going to get this information out, and most of the time you end up disappointed. I can almost guarantee you do. It's time, perhaps, to look at this as a grassroots social movement and do some fundraisers, raise your money, distribute your literature, join forces with other organizations, whether you have differences or not, work them out, but work them out quietly, because you end up looking like clowns. I'm not saying anyone personally here, but in general, like clowns, and it takes away from your organization's strength, and the government and the press sit back and gloat because they know you're your own worst enemy. So start putting it together and join it together and network with each other and know who your enemy is. It ain't Move Forward, it ain't Move On, it ain't the next guy. It's the press and the media. Try me out on that one and you'll see I'm right.
Okay, first question. Okay, good night. Be that way.
Sorry, have you had any strange electrical phenomena associated with you?
I have for many years. Peter can comment on that, and also I was working with a production company. I have had anomalies around me all my life. There were other witnesses to the Bentwaters events who had previous UFO experiences to one degree or another. That is documented in the book, but unfortunately, I have electronic anomalies occasionally. I was being interviewed in San Diego, California, by a gentleman named Russ Estes, and I blew out all his, I mean, there was no other way, according to him, that this could have happened, but all the computers and cameras just went down. I blow lights out at Peter's house occasionally. I haven't done it in a while, and I caused, you know, I'll hit lights and they just go. A lot of things. But who knows, you know.
How reliable
I don't
would you
think I'm
say
alone.
hypnotic regression was in discovering the truth about abduction stories?
That's a very good question. Hypnotic regression in the service of recovering repressed memories is right now a cause celeb of controversy in the psychiatric and the mental health professional community. Are hypnotherapists or regressive hypnotists somehow informing the patient? Are they suggesting or asking leading questions? I think it varies from hypnotherapeutic situation to situation. Again, I say this as a layman, but an informed layman who has had a lot of hands-on experience and an awful lot of witnessing time. Bud Hopkins, Professor David Jacobs at Temple University in Philadelphia, Dr. John Mack are among the best people in the business. It is one of those areas where you don't have to be a medical doctor or a psychiatrist. If you're well trained, and if, as Bud does, when he works with a patient, with somebody who feels that they've had an experience that is upsetting them or you know, fits this profile of abduction, if he asks a leading question, it is always a leading question in the other direction. Oh, you know, if you're working with a person and you say, well, you know, these beings, they must have been quite tall. And the person in the trance, if this is the, you know, their recollection, will say, no, they're actually very short, etc., and so forth. What we find, and one of the things that does not come out in this research that much, but if you read Hopkins books, David Jacobs' Secret Life, Thomas Bullard's compilation of 600 cases that have been reviewed, etc., you find that most of the folks that feel they've had these experiences have a good deal of conscious memory, and sometimes all the memory is conscious. Other people have a certain amount of information that they've put a lid on, or that, you know, has been repressed in them somehow. I can't speak as a professional, but I can say that hypnotic regression to retrieve compressed or repressed memories can be an extraordinarily powerful and positive tool if used properly and responsibly.
Can I ask about implants? Have you ever met anybody who's had any experience with it?
Yes, the gentleman says, he asks about implants. We have found, and again, it's a very disturbing part of this work, that over and over, individuals who have a history of this abduction phenomena have a small thing, a device. We do not know what it is, and I refuse to tell you because I don't know. It may be something that is used for tracking purposes. It may be something to affect behavior. It may be something to gather information. The ones that I've observed take different forms. They are literally all, you have to rule out every possibility of this thing being something that's a chance thing. Often it is inserted way up into the nasal cavity and is silicone-based in like a very small wedge. Other times they take the form of a small metallic BB. Nature magazine, one of the most distinguished scientific publications in the world, did an analysis of one, I think 3 years ago. What they could come up with was that it was not natural, and that where it was could not have gotten there in any way by an accidental means. They leave scars, and these are things that we have dealt with over and over and over again. We have pages of medical confirmations that this is absolutely anomalous. A child, the proverbial sticking the pencil up the nose and creating a wound cannot be mistaken for a surgical procedure. They are not always in the nose. Sometimes they're located in other places. Numbers have been retrieved. What we keep finding again is this damn catch-22. You get a reputable laboratory, you ask them to analyze it, they do. They inevitably ask, where did this come from? What's the story? When you give them an idea, they do not want anything to do with releasing information on it that suggests that they might take seriously that it was put in place by non-human beings for whatever purposes. But this implant phenomena is very real. And again, I can only suggest the works of Hopkins and Jacobs and some of the pioneering researchers in this area to confirm it. Also, although I don't have it at the tip of my tongue, that piece in Nature magazine, maybe it's 1989, maybe 1990, I do not remember.
Is radiation there at all?
Never that I'm aware of.
One second for the mic.
Do you think these beings have some objective in mind around us?
Absolutely. But again, I can only make educated guesses.
What
Even
would be your educated guess then?
I'll make several. One is that they have their own agendas, and whatever they are, they're their agendas, and we don't know what it is, and that's a respectable guess. Another is, and this is a very optimistic one, this planet, because of and I don't mean in this room, in fact, we are probably representative of more decent, humanistic people that want to see some good happen in this world and not continue the terrible process of poisoning our planet with radiation, with toxicity, with overpopulation. We are driving this planet to hell on a handcart. If things continue to go even another 50 or 100 years, we may have an uninhabitable place. It may actually be what is going on is creating a slightly hybrided individual that is mostly human, but not totally, to continue to persevere in this increasingly polluted, toxic atmosphere, to using some of them and some of us. I wish I knew. I wish to God I knew. Reproduction does seem to play a part in it. Many of the reports that we get, and they are documented, suggest that there is breeding or interbreeding that is being experimented with here. And again, we can only guess at the purposes. I refuse to tell you that I know, because I don't know. And I'm with my nose to the glass of seeing a number of hundreds of the best documented reports. I don't know. But there is some kind of modus operandi and some reason for it. I'm sorry I can't give you a better answer. Sir?
One strange phenomenon which seems to be largely confined to the United States is that of cattle mutilation. A number of people, notably Linda Moulton Howe, whom I've had the privilege of hearing, seems to imply that the circumstantial evidence strongly points to the involvement of this phenomenon, whatever it is. And it seems strange that this doesn't occur in the same way in other parts of the world. And I just wondered if you was inclined to agree with Moulton Howe. Possibly it's pointing towards some connection between the two phenomena.
I think Larry would agree with me. First, we know Linda, and we respect and admire her work in this area. She has done extraordinary work in a very difficult and disturbing field. What this gentleman is bringing up is the fact that since about 1978, as such, although it seems to go back earlier, in America, in rural areas, there have been documentations of the mutilation, not ritual mutilation, and not mutilation by, thrill-seeking, nasty, juvenile delinquents of animals, horses, cattle, sheep, etc. What we are always confronted with is the animal's carcass is found in an area, rural United States, North Dakota, Arizona, take your pick, where it would normally have been already attacked and at least partially scavenged by scavengers. These carcasses are never touched. Number two, organs are removed. Tongues, sexual apparatus, eyes, whatever. They are removed with a precision that you can only associate with laser surgery. There are often ground impressions to suggest that these animals were dropped into place. Again, we have never seen a situation where an authentic one has footprints leading in or out. Almost always, or very often, this is in an area where it is associated with incidences of UFO activity. These are grounded facts. I don't know why. Again, perhaps it's a tissue sampling. I know if I were trying to think scientifically and say, here I am in the southwestern part of the United States, nuclear generator 120 miles away from here, some toxicity in the water from an old copper mine, time for a tissue test. Zap that animal, grab it up, do a coring sample, drop them in place, take off, analyze it. It may be that simple, it may not. I also feel that there is probably a similar parallel going on where either for disinformation, confusion, or for a whole other set of purposes, or similar purposes, government or intelligence plays into this somewhat, and perhaps some of these mutilations are not necessarily non-human. Perhaps some of them are human, but again, they all fit the same profile. The carcasses are not disturbed. The disturbances are surgical in the way that they appear, and we've had that confirmed by numerous, and Linda's the best source as far as I'm concerned, pathologists, veterinarians, and animal breeders in these areas where these things happen. Why it seems to be happening more in the United States, I do not know. Maybe it's happening more but not recognized in other places as such. Maybe there's a reason that, it's happening where it's happening. I just don't know. Question?
Can I just comment?
Okay. You're next.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to comment on what you just said about the mutilations. We had a speaker come to our area once named Jeff Freed, who worked for the Home Office as a researcher for 5 years or so. And he explained to us that the American government had made some kind of a liaison with the beings, the Greys, and that the agreement between them was that they were to take so many cattle for their needs, and that they reneged and started abducting humans as well, and that the whole situation was more or less out of control.
Right. Well, all I can say is maybe that's true, maybe it's not. I have never, ever seen any real evidence that remotely suggests to me that that's anything beyond a marvelously attractive paranoid fantasy, the same way that we cut a deal with the aliens, we broke our agreement under President Eisenhower, that's why they're abducting people. The real work and the real observations are tough enough. Maybe it's true. Frankly, I feel it's cut out of whole cloth, and it's the kind of thing that gives this whole field the wonderful paranoid, psychotic dimension that it has to many rational folks. I just don't know, but my best gut sense is that that's an invention to try to explain some of this absolutely unexplainable material. Also, remember again, we are open to any questions on bed waters as well. Next, sir.
The other day, I've got a couple of members in my group, and we were talking about abductions, you know, and one of them had a very red scoop mark, and the other person had not quite as bad, but is that abduction?
The mark that this man refers to, a scoop mark, we have, I have to say, several hundred cases of people who come forward. They wake up, they've had a super real dream that they describe as not a dream. Often they're dressed not the way they went to bed. Sometimes they're facing the other direction. They may have bad eye irritation. And one of the things that we see most often, one can say, oh, it could be the signs of the stigmata where we create markings, or these people are attention-seeking sadomasochists who deface themselves for attention, exactly. But it looks like a miniature ice cream scoop of skin has been retrieved from the dermal layer, and there is never any blood associated with it. If they've been in bedclothes or against a sheet, there's no blood to be found, or in the rarest cases. And these scoop marks appear in a number of cases, in a number of places, sometimes on the knee, sometimes in the back of the knee, sometimes on the back. There are many places where we've seen them. It is one of the most, the thigh, the leg, it is one of the most common details that comes up over and over again in these alleged situations. All I can say is that if you get intruders or missing time and you flip through these books, you will see photographs that may be quite identical to what your friend or colleague has. You're certainly welcome to write us in New York on this, but the best thing we can do is say, yep, sure seems to be one. You know, good luck.
Do you know Tony Dodd?
I know who Tony is, but I don't, I've never met.
But he's involved there. There's
Yes.
people going there.
Yes. I hope that over time this is taken more seriously in this country as it is in the States. The best that we've been able to do is we now have what amounts to an underground railroad of mental health professionals around the United States. We have had several hundred come forward discreetly over the last few years. Psychiatrists, psychologists, psychiatric social workers, emergency room nurses, different types of therapists who say, I take this phenomena seriously. I have a patient. I cannot figure out what else it is. For years, we were seeing this classic situation of a decent therapist has a patient present for therapy. Their core gripe where it comes up in situations, I think I was abducted by aliens. Well, the doctor looks at the patient and says, obviously this couldn't be the case. Probably a veneer or a mask or a device to repress the fact that they were sexually abused as a child. If we can get to the core material, the hallucination will disappear. Over and over, we are reported. And this includes, again, mental health professionals of the highest caliber. April 20th, to digress for a moment, will mark the publication of a book by Dr. John Mack, Professor Emeritus of Psychiatry at our distinguished Harvard University in Massachusetts, who has put his career on the line because he has found patients. I mean, people come to him, and there is no other way to explain this. I'm not even sure the point I was going to make here, except to say that, well, yes, what I do remember, that we can now, in some cases, if somebody writes us and say, please, I know I'm not crazy, this has happened to me, it's now happening to my child, I need to know I'm not crazy by talking to a mental health professional. Is there anyone in my area or my state that you can recommend I speak to? And we are now able to make some discrete referrals where people can meet, often on a pro bono basis, with a bona fide psychologist or psychiatrist that will take them seriously. I also have to say, in a small number of cases, when these mental health professionals approach us, and we are doing workshops around the United States at an irregular rate for them, to familiarize them with some of this material that we put together and let them begin to deal with it. Because we're not mental health professionals and we're not physicians. A few of them have courageously said, or somebody might say, well, that explains it and they're crazy too, that the reason they got into the healing arts is because this is something that has happened to them. And that's all I can say about it. Questions?
Yes, this one's for Larry. Larry, was you not, or are you not covered by the Official Secrets Act?
I'm American. And I don't care if I was or not anyway. It hasn't stopped me yet, but I'm American. They can, you know, they can keep me out of your country, but no, it doesn't bother me. Neither does the National Security Act of 47. You know, all they have to do is, who asked the question? The voices come, oh, they just come down. You know, the day they really prosecute somebody or try to silence them in an official capacity, they're admitting that that person's right. And I don't think they're that foolish. They're up against the wall. This is coming down. And Bentwaters, and I can guarantee it, Bentwaters will be the one to move toward this. I have to tell you that my plan is right now, in the United States, I think for many reasons it's necessary. Colonel Holt recently made his disinformation statements to me and about me in Omni magazine without naming me. He also said that, and this is after we've been very good with the guy, and you know, I feel sympathy for him, but that's it's gotten old, you know. That's his problem, as they say. On the other hand, he also made this off-the-cuff statement, and also those stories of holographic beings are untrue. Never in the history of this, me being involved with Bentwaters, have I ever heard about holographic aliens. Yet he made this off-the-cuff statement that isn't true either. Very strange. What I am doing is meeting with a lawyer when I get back to the United States. I intend to, so far, if it's practical and I can get lawyers to take it, it does seem I have one that might be interested on other things we've talked about around this, suing Mr. Holt, and you can disseminate this is fine, not because I want to hurt Mr. Holt, but suing him for defamation of character, where in fact my true motive is to get Mr. Holt into a court of law in the United States, have documents and evidence to this event subpoenaed, have other witnesses subpoenaed, and let's mess around with it in front of a judge and see where it goes. That is my plan and my promise.
And that is the perfect note to end on. We are at 13 minutes of the hour. We actually have to be out of here at 10. Thank you all for coming. God bless you all.
Thank you, really. Good seeing you.
I'd like to thank Peter and Larry for a fascinating presentation. Watch out for their book. It's going to be a blockbuster. It's called Left at Eastgate. It should be out by the end of the year. I'd like to thank Omar for the use of his projector. Also thank Emu Forest staff for all their hard work. Our next meeting here will be on the 23rd of May, and it will be starting at 7:45 and it will be finishing at 10. Thank you all very much. Yes,